This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and tonight we're talking about Onibaba from 1964, directed by Kaneto Shindo. The tagline for this film, RJ. The most daring film import ever from Japan.
Do you think that's accurate, though?
While her son, Kichi, is away at war, a woman and her daughter-in-law survive by killing samurai who stray into their swamp, then selling whatever valuables they find. Both are devastated when they learn that Kichi has died, but his wife soon begins an affair with a neighbor who survived the war, Haichi. The mother disapproves, and when she can't steal Haichi for herself, tries to scare her daughter-in-law with a mysterious mask from a dead samurai.
That's descriptive.
Yeah, it's not bad. It actually, it's straight and to the point. So, RJ, I've owned this movie on DVD since it came out in 2004, I guess.
Okay.
And I've only ever seen it once. And I watched it like sometime shortly after I would have picked it up. Back in the days when I didn't just have piles and piles and piles of movies to get to. It was like if you bought a movie and if you paid as much as these Criterions were back in the day, you watched them right away. So I remember I was like, oh man, this is a Japanese horror movie from Criterion. Like, my God. And at this point, like, I never had got around to watching that Kwaidan until much later.
Oh, interesting that you would compare Kwaiwang to Onibaba.
The Kwaidan?
The Kwaidan. Interesting. Okay, yeah, so you never seen any other Japanese horror?
At that point, I mean, I've probably seen Ring.
The American one or the Japanese one?
Japanese.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I had to ask.
I've been dabbling my toe, but like for like earlier stuff, it wasn't really much of an option that I knew of at that point, anyway.
Sure.
So, yeah, my memory of the movie was rural, like a rural setting, lots of long grass, and something about a mother and a daughter, and they're doing bad things, and then there's a mask involved, but that was about all I had retained about this.
Sure.
Watching this movie today, it just hit me immediately. I was like, holy shit, the atmosphere. The atmosphere abounds. The movie even actually has like a weird kind of process of how it kind of doles out information, where you actually get like a Japanese character for, was it like a hole?
Yeah, so they talk about, I actually got a couple screenshots. It is the hole. And it's the pit of darkness that is like existed for eternities or something like that. I thought it was funny because it's like, that's how people talk about like lockdown and quarantines. And I was like, oh, look, Japanese holes. Yeah. Same thing.
So it opens up with this hole and these little intertitles, like a prelude to like a trailer. And then Onibaba in brackets, demon women.
Yeah.
And you're like,
it's cool, hey?
What's this all going to be about? So, so the movie, like, oh man, it's so widescreen. It's so widescreen, RJ. Taking full advantage of the frame and just shooting things, in that what we would kind of call like kind of that art house kind of Terrence Malick way of framing little details, things that like you just drop. Like it's just more like it's almost padding. It's there is often, like establishing shots of things, but this movie, there's no way of actually establishing shots when everything is just grass and reeds. Yeah. So everything, you're always kind of like, your horizon line is very restricted to like, it looks endless, and you could be really, really close to it, or you could be like, 100 feet away, but it would look kind of the same. Just like, oh, the grains of grass look thicker or something like that, but it's so slight. And you see it like blowing in the wind. You never really quite can see the sky. It's there, but you're always just like, you're in the weeds. And so this movie's like got these shots of these two soldiers. I don't know if I'd call them samurais exactly, but they are Japanese soldiers who are, one's injured. The other one is dragging his buddy with them, and they're just like on the run from some sort of skirmish, some battle war going off in the distance. You don't hear a battle going on. You just hear these men grunting silently making their way through these grasses, trying to get to somewhere, and they're running and they're running and running, and they finally, like, the one who's saving his buddy, they collapse in the grass. They look around. Is this a safe place? And then out of nowhere, spears come driving into them, and they're dead. And then out comes two women who have dispatched these two. And of course, at this point, I'm like, this is actually reminding me of another Criterion film that we watched many, many, many years ago now. But in the Samurai trilogy, there's this plot beat, this idea of these, like, peasants who are making a living, basically, collecting the armor off of dead men and then turning around and selling them. And it's kind of this frowned upon process. But in this particular version, it's like, well, this is like a more explicit thing where, they're killing these people, or at least speeding up the process of them dying in some cases. And they literally strip the dead. You keep, like, there's like these, like, kind of nervousness. I'm like, well, are they actually dead? Are these guys actually dead? Because, sometimes, like, they can reach out at you and grab at you because they're not really dead. And then you have to start hacking away at them till they are dead, slit their throat. But no, they're dead. But they do give a nice kick to the head just to ensure that they are no more.
Well, how else would you check, Jared?
How else would you check? This is olden times. And they start dragging those bodies through the grass and throw them in the hole. I was, like, definitely feeling very sympathetic to the actors of these dudes having to be pulled through all this grass, probably for, like, multiple takes, and they're just in their Japanese underpants.
Yeah, well, them and even the three main actors in this movie, because they all have a scene where they nakedly run through the grass, and in each one of their scenes, I was like, ooh. It's like they're gonna get a little cuts and stings, man, my man. I don't know about you, but
I decided to confirm this. So this movie is set during a civil war in the 14th century. So that's like the 1300s.
Yeah. So I actually, Jared, I'll get there, but as I've been doing, because these are on the channel, I watched the supplements with Kaneto Shindo. It's like 20 minutes of him talking about this, and he talks about the time frame, and he said he put it there just because he's like, it couldn't be current. It needed to be in this time frame because he said the crops and fields had to have been plowed through war, and that was the reason that they couldn't have access to resources. He's like, it needed to be a time where the war actually took over the farming and it made them unable to actually do anything. And, like, that's what the setup is. So this 14th century stuff, that's kind of like why he picked that specific time.
So we basically, the movie establishes kind of like what the gimmick is, where they take the armor and the weapons, and then they go hawk them at, like, a man who also lives in a hole, essentially, like in a cave. And he takes a look and he's like, this is all worn down crap. And that's what you would do if you're trying to, like, pay the lowest dollar. You tell the other person that what they're looking at is crap, and then you say, all I can do is do a little bit of this. And at this point I realized, the one thing I missed is before they actually bring the armor to him, they stop at their house, at their hut first, and they load up on some carbs. And this is where I'm like, is this the return of millet? Good old millet.
Oh yeah,
the crappy rice, which I only learned from Criterion films what millet was.
That was that in Seven Samurai?
Samurai, yeah.
That we were talking about millet, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a town in our province called Millet. Did you? I don't know if you knew that, Jarrett. Is that why your interest first sparked?
Actually, it was from reading probably the Lone Wolf and Cub manga.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, what the hell is millet? But it's kind of like, but it's the same thing for me. Like, what the hell is mead?
Oh yeah, they're all like strains of things we have now, but like different.
Yeah, but there's like these old timey ways of saying it, and you're just like, what is this? They're always obsessed about it, and they're really sad they have to eat millet all the time.
Well, I mean, I'd probably be bummed out too if I only had one thing all the time. Like, even if it was good rice or not even just millet. If it was just barley, that would suck.
And you definitely build up an appetite after a hard day of murdering and dumping corpses in holes.
I mean, it does wear on you quite a bit. You get pretty hungry.
Yeah.
I liked that scene a lot. where they run back and then it's just pounding waters and eating handfuls of rice and just exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. It's I mean, it's like I said, it's kind of relatable, but that and the score, the music, it's so good.
When it picks up at that point.
Yeah.
Well, because the first one hits, and you're like, is that like someone saying that? And then you realize it's on this track, and then the bang, that kind of jazz influenced drums that's on there.
Yeah. So I can't remember his name, but the guy who did the music for this, apparently he did all of Shindo's like all the music for all of his movies, and he was like, this one I just wanted something.
Hikaru Hayashi.
Yeah. He's like, I told him I want some percussion, and then he threw in the person's voices, and then he does a little. He's like, it kind of sounds like this. He's like, allow me to demonstrate for you, and he goes, yeah. He's like, that's kind of what it sounds like, and that there's no one else in like being interviewed. It's just him, and you're kind of watching at home. And you're like, yeah, nice. Yeah, nice. That is what it sounds like. Yeah. Anyways, what?
So yeah, we get a snapshot of like how their operation is going to run.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that popped into mind watching this, as we're gearing up for Cormet, is that this is essentially a B movie. Like, this is B movie material. Like, this is something that Roger Corman would have done a story about. Like, there's like stories about like, there's like the one famous like Western story of like this like cannibal family that people would stay at their house and then they'd kill them and eat them and like take their stuff. I can't remember the name of the family though, but that's like something that like Corman would do, and the way he would shoot it in the same era is it would be pretty junky and like a B movie because there's no budget and no sense of real like artisanal film craft.
What kind of film craft, Jarrett? Sorry,
the artisanal kind.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think the movie you're thinking of is it the episode of the X-Files called Home? Is that the?
Not Home.
Oh, okay. No,
this is a historical thing.
So is that?
Yeah.
Are you saying the X-Files isn't a historical document?
An historical document.
Shameful.
I was definitely going to look this up earlier, but I'm forgetting what their name is. Unfortunately.
Podcast is over then, I guess.
See, there's a whole thing about. Look at that. There's a Kentucky cannibal named Boone Helm.
Boonhound?
Boone Helm.
It's a cool name. You don't run into a lot of people named Boone anymore.
Boone?
Boone?
Yeah.
It's kind of a nice name.
Yeah, there's always these tales though of like in rural communities and in the Appalachians and all sorts of ongoings and whatnot. So anywho, this Haichi, his best buddy was Kichi, who was married to the daughter-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
He shows up one day. He's kind of dressed in like tattered robes of a priest. He's got the prayer necklace and everything like that, and he's just like I don't know, stripped down savage of a man. He doesn't give a shit who he kills. It's all about survival. He doesn't even feel too bad about it. He's like really slow playing the what happened to my son. What happened to her husband? And he's like, I got a story to tell. We were fighting for one general, and then we wound up joining with this other general. It's just these fights between these guys, and then there was another fight, and we got away, which is like one way of saying we ran away. And they took off, and they're like, oh, let's go for this farmhouse. It's empty. And then, like, soon enough, 20 farmers just appeared out of nowhere and beat your son to death.
Yeah, I think it's funny the way he describes it. He's like, they beat us up real good. And he died. And he's like, okay. He kind of talks like that, Kai Sato. Or, what's his name? Yeah, Kai Sato. Yeah, interesting.
Kai Sato. Yeah. So,
Kai Sato.
And you kind of realize, like, well, now it's like these two women and this one guy in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. And then what happened?
Well, you think like, oh, well, they're going to go back to normal. He's like totally okay of talking about how he kills people and steals their stuff, like a priest, which is where he got his priest outfit from. He's like, yeah, because people will trust priests. It's like, that's a good point. He helps them catch some fish. He's seeing this, nubile young woman, recently widowed, and he sees an opportunity. But they're over by the creek and getting some fish and whatnot. And then they see these two samurais having a battle, chasing after one another on horses. They get off of him. They start just running right into the water and start having a sword fight in like neck deep water. And they're kind of just standing there, but the camera's telling the story of just their mindset as you see the sweat kind of building on their face because they're like, "Ooh, here's an opportunity to make some money."
And this is after a long buildup of Kaneto asking them a lot. How do you guys have money? Where do you guys get food from?
How do you get this? That's pretty cool. That's interesting.
It's like, pretty nice shirt you got there, old lady. He's like, where'd you get that shirt?
That seems really rude, isn't it?
I mean, it can be. Depends who you ask.
So, soon enough, these samurais, they kind of stop fighting. One of them's left for dead, and the other one starts swimming away. And he's coming to these pleasant little peasants who are just waiting to help pull him out. But instead, they proceed to murder them and drown them and pull them out, strip them down, send their bodies down that river. Not even going to waste the hole on them.
Not waste the what?
The hole.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you don't have to drag them to the hole.
Yeah. The river will do. Sure.
As long as you get like what you need out of it. You get a sword, you get some armor, whatever.
So now Haichi, he's in charge. He's taking control of this because he's the man. He grabs the armor, heads over to the hole, I guess we'll call him cave boss.
Yeah, cave boss is cool.
Cave boss, and says, "Hey, what are you going to give me for this?" And he's like, "Well, you're going to get you're going to get 3 bags of millet. That's all I got, though. That's all I can give you because the farmers they ain't working. No, everyone's hiding in the mountains till this whole thing passes." He's like, "Well, I'll just take a bottle of sake instead."
Pretty fair trade, right? You're an alcoholic, aren't you? Like me.
So.
Yep.
And then, so now we shift gears a little bit, and then we get to one of RJ's favorite hashtags on Letterboxd, the threat of rape.
So this one would almost even be better under the implication.
There's definitely an implication because it doesn't quite go down that road. Because sometimes, as we've also learned, is sometimes you have to work through the no.
Can you state your name and personal information for the record?
RJ Baylog. Because remember, you do all parts of the show. You are the mastermind.
Yeah, I do both voices.
The puppet master.
But as I many times have said, these are characters that we play for a podcast. But yeah, it's definitely, the tag is, this is one of the places where I was like, I don't know if I should really tag it because it's not super threatened. It is more the implication.
Right.
Yeah, and it's more as you would have put it. I'm not going to repeat it, but what you said.
I found the name of the family of serial killers, the Bloody Benders.
The Bloody Benders, where did they live?
Kansas.
Kansas? That's where Superman's from, man.
Yeah, they sure did.
And they were eating people?
Well, there was some thought that they might have been. They might have just been burying them in the back.
Well, how would you do it?
They were believed to be German immigrants.
Oh. How would you do it if you had to?
What's that? Cannibalize?
You know what, yeah.
Well, I'd have to go back and watch that Alex Jones video of him talking about eating people's asses to feed his to feed his kids.
This is above my pay grade, man.
It happened just a week ago.
I saw the headlines, but I chose not to delve farther down that Alex Jones hole because
that's a different kind of hole.
Oh man, woohoo!
Yeah. Anyway, so daughter-in-law, she's getting sized up by Haichi, and this just kind of puts out mom.
Well, she doesn't like that there's someone who could potentially steal her assistant.
Yeah, well, it's also kind of a slap in the face. Like, what do you mean? I'm not good look enough for you? You don't want these titties?
And then comes what I have to say, I think, is the grossest line I have heard in a Criterion movie so far.
Oh.
And we've watched Sallow, Jarrett. One of the grossest lines I've ever heard when she's trying to entice young Hachi, and she's like, I know I'm old, but she says, I'm not old inside. And it made me just shiver. I was like, ugh. It kind of reminded me of that Arrested Development when he makes the video for George Michael, and it's like, young or old, it doesn't matter in the dark. But not old inside. I was like, ooh. I was like, that's gross. But age does things to all of us, right?
That's right.
So, anyways, keep talking about this gross sex movie.
Well, so anyway, so now this turns into the titties hanging out movie for a little while.
Yep.
There's a lot of boobs because it's getting real warm out there.
So
breasts are on display.
Breasts are on display, and I not to interrupt, but Kaneto Shindo specifically addresses this, Jarrett.
Yeah.
So they had to film in the summer because of the material they had for clothing was very thin, and he says it also was to show that the women were naked, and he says, I don't want to be confused. He says, I don't want to say that because they were naked, they were more sexualized, but it shows them in a more primitive state. And he said that's also why he filmed it in black and white, because it is primitive. It is like down to the bare bones. And then he talks about sex a lot. So I'll talk about that other portion later, but he specifically mentions the boobs, and I was going to get a screenshot. He talks about how one actress's boobs were nice and round and the others were sagging. And he said, they didn't really like it, but I explained to them, this is your job. And you can't think about if your husband is going to like this or not, because this is your character for a movie. It's not really you. So you have to be naked. And he said they were really good sports about it.
Well, when you're right, you're right.
So just as you're talking about the breasts, and there's that scene where they're side by side, he does say, he's like, hey, listen, baby. He's like, I don't like it either, but this is the movies. We got to do this.
It's not,
so
yeah. So now the daughter-in-law, she's sneaking off at night, banging this dude. Mom does not like this at all.
Not really.
It's pissing her off. She threatens Haichi, saying, "Hey, quit doing that, or I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you both in the middle of the night." And he's like, "No, you won't, because then you'll be all alone." And one night, Mom is visited by a samurai man wearing a mask. The mask that's on the covers of the poster on the DVD. And he's just like, good evening. I need some assistance.
He's like, excuse me, madam. Oh, but before he does that, he does kind of punch a sword through the hut just as a precaution. And then, excuse me, madam, could you escort me out of this grass field, please? It takes some convincing, right, Jared?
Yeah, he coaxes her.
And then you get the Bane explanation as to why he wears the mask. He says, do you ever want to know why I wear a mask?
Was so handsome.
He's the most handsome guy you ever saw.
In all of Kyoto before it burned down.
I get it. That's very relatable to me. So.
Yeah. But but there's this whole thing, because the whole thing, like, why doesn't he just take off his goddamn mask? I mean, wouldn't this whole negotiation go a lot faster with the mask off? And surely he's having a hard time seeing in the dark with his mask on. It must be between the grass, the dark, the mask. It's too much. Take off the mask.
Maybe that's why he needs a guide, right? He can't see.
Maybe. So she's helping him, but she's plotting and she's asking questions, and he's suspicious. He's not one of these dummies. But sure enough, he finds his way falling down that hole.
He falls down the hole. Real good, Jarrett.
Real good.
Real good.
Yeah. So he's down the hole, and she's like, that's that out of the way. And the next day she returns. At this point, there's a lot of frolicking going on now. Lots of just running around. Everything is hanging out through the reeds. Mom's getting a nice big post that she pops into the ground. Takes the rope, goes down to the hole where there's just piles of skeletons.
I like that they were completely clean skeletons too.
It wasn't like clean by carrion.
Like, I know that they strip them down, but it's just it is kind of funny how clean the skeletons are.
Yeah.
You know?
And then so she finds a nice dead samurai man with a mask, and she's like working this mask, trying to pull it off this guy's head, and it just finally it comes, and he's all like messed up underneath. He's all burnt, and it's like, whoa, what the hell is this all about? But she's got this idea.
What kind of idea, Jarrett?
She's going to use this mask, and she's going to pretend to be a demon ghost in the middle of the night when her daughter-in-law goes to Haichi's place, and she's going to spook her, make her turn around. She's going to break up that relationship. She's not listening. So this kind of plays out time and time again, this psychological element. Haichi, he's not getting any action. He's starting to have a hard time thinking. But he keeps getting, but she's not coming over. He's like, what the hell is this all about? And his daughter-in-law, she can't make it. She can't get past this ghost. And then finally,
been there.
And then finally, I think it's during a rainstorm.
Yep.
During a rainstorm, she finally breaks the guard past the demon ghost. And there's a bit of a chase. And finally, Haichi and the daughter-in-law, they get together, they embrace, they bang right there. And mom goes back to the hut. And the daughter-in-law and Haichi, they start making plans, about the future. Why don't you just move in with me? Yeah, that's what I've been saying all along, baby. Haichi goes back to his hut, and there's just some guy hanging out, and he gets killed, and he's fucking dead.
And then what happens?
And then daughter-in-law, she goes back to her hut and finds her mother-in-law just sobbing on the ground, and she's wearing the mask, and she's freaked out, and it's like, no, it's me all along. And of course the daughter's like, what the fuck, you piece of shit, you're like, what's wrong with you? And she's like, my mask, it won't come off. And it's like, see, that's your punishment, you're the piece of shit.
Ooh.
And it's like, and then she's like refusing to help her get this mask off, because apparently when the water fell, it made it stick to her face.
Allegedly.
And so there's like this drawn out thing about getting this mask off, and it's not coming. The mom's got to agree to all these things. You got to let me go whenever I want, and there's no more of the old dynamic. And then so finally she gets like a hammer out and just starts smashing this woman's head about, and then it cracks in half, and then it kind of peels apart, and you get to see the mom's face underneath, and she's just like all like burnt up. Like there's just something like something's happened with this mask, and she thinks she's free, and she starts chasing her daughter through the woods, through the reeds, and chasing her. And the movie ends with this like slow motion jump over the hole. The daughter-in-law makes it, and then as the woman's jumping over it, she's like, I'm a human being. And then the movie ends.
Sure.
So on rewatch of this movie, I said, like I remember like the vagueness of the vague kind of idea of the movie. I think this movie's awesome. It's cool. It's cool. Gorgeous. Those shots of those crows on tree branches around the swamp, and they're just all shot. The blowing of the reeds, the score, cinematography, the simplicity of the story. I love all of that stuff. Maybe it goes on a little long, potentially, arguably. It probably, I don't know exactly what you trim. I didn't feel like it was going on too long. I think at one point I just kind of paused it to see where I was at. I'm like, oh, it's been an hour. I'm like, huh. Yeah. Like, where else does this go? But I as far as like a revisiting of a movie, usually they're sometimes letdowns, and you're like, oh, I see a lot of problems with this. But this was not the case. This movie has so many things to recommend about it. And again, this is like, I don't know, I still don't see a lot of people who watch this movie or even talk about it. It still hasn't been re-released on Blu-ray to this day. And I know those people love their Japanese horror, so I'm kind of surprised this hasn't got a re-release, because I think it would look amazing in high def. But RJ, I'm curious what you think of Onibaba.
Well, as I described as having one of the grossest lines of dialogue I've ever heard, I find Onibaba a very good show, Jarrett. It's very good. I think it's kind of funny because the parts that I like, the very beginning and the very end. Those are, I think, the very best parts of it. It's not, according to Kaneto Shindo, that's not what the movie is about at all. The movie is about raw sexuality, Jared, and I'll get there. But I think Onibaba is wicked good. The intro with the kind of the chase down, that score with the oh, it's so cool. It gets you real amped up. And then that scene with them gorging, you're just like, what's going on? And you really get drawn into it. I think that's so good. It looks great. The grass, every time cutting back to the grass is super cool. And then I do really like the kind of like the petty trick at the end where it's like, she's like, if you have sex, you're going to get demons. And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, you're going to get demons. It's just pretty simple. It's like, you have sex, you'll get demons. She's like, but it's totally natural. People do it forever. It's like, yeah, man and wife. Anyone else, it's case of the demons. And then like even just like the act of like scaring her, I think is really funny. It's good Catholic guilt, Jarrett, into scaring you into abstinence. And I was like, yeah, love that. So I think all that stuff is wicked good. It looks awesome. And like, I agree with you. The simplicity of it is really good. And so that's what Shindo talks about too, is he's like, it's very simple. He's like, that's because he says at the time, color was like the thing in Japan because of like Technicolor and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. He's like, but I did black and white. He's like, because I wanted it to make it of like, it's like it's one or it's two things. He's like, because the movie is very simple, and that's what he was kind of saying about like primitivism, because he actually describes it pretty eloquently. He's talking about like sexuality and stuff like that. When he's talking about the boobs, he loses you a little bit. You're like, what are you talking about, dude? But he talks about, he's like, the whole movie is about it. He's like, because it's this thing that like everyone does and is a product of. He's like, but then it gets like shamed because of what it is or something. He's like, but it's part of like human like nature and all that kind of stuff. And then he talks about how the way that the grass moves, he was talking about it like mimicking both emotions and sexuality. He's like, the undulation of the grass, he's like, it's at different like rhythms when they're happy or they're doing it or they're scared. And I was like, I didn't really get that, but I did like it cut into grass all the time. I thought that was just nice, like a nice cut. He also talks about like the music where not the score part, but when she's running through the grass, there's pigeons. And he's like, I used pigeons because they're very raw sexual beings. And again, I was like, Shindo, what do you mean, dude? So it's his interview. It's only like 20 minutes long. Some of it's really interesting, and then some of it I was kind of like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. One other thing, which is like a super sick burn to Ken Sato, the guy. He's like, we wanted a guy who was not very good looking for this role because it would be more believable. We wanted him like primal, and then it cuts to like the actor, and he's like, so yeah, there you go. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, he's just like shoveling shit on this guy.
Well, they don't want a Mifune in there.
That's because that's what I was thinking the whole time. I was like, I wonder why Toshiro Mifune wasn't in here. And they bring it up. They're like, we needed someone who wasn't handsome. And I was like, there it is. That's why they didn't do it. So he talks about like that kind of stuff. And then what else was I going to say? Apparently this movie was shot and released in the same year. And it was a big success for Toho. And he talks about like the contract details, which are like crazy. Apparently Toho lent his production company money with interest. And if this movie hadn't been successful and made money, then they would have like their company would have folded because they would have had to have paid back all the money to Toho. But because it was successful, they were able to pay it off really fast. And I was like, that's such a weird thing. Like I've never really heard of that. Maybe it's common. I don't know. Or maybe it was. Then there's another supplement on the Criterion channel where it's that guy Kai Sato. It's just Super 8 footage of them filming, and there's no audio or anything. And I flipped it on, and my interest kind of waned in it after a little while, but it's there. Anyways, I liked that this is just what a lot of people I think this is like Goosebumps, The Haunted Mask, and I'm pretty sure R.L. Stine was probably into this. Friend of the show Oliver Granger highlighted that this is also The Mask with Jim Carrey. So there's a lot of influence. You can see Onibaba everywhere, Jarrett. But he was talking like the director talks about it being all sexuality, and like that's the part of the movie that I actually think loses me the most is that middle bit, that middle 40 minutes, because it just dips like into not as much is happening, and it's like apparently that's what the whole movie was to him. But it's like I think the intro is really interesting, the ending is really interesting, and the middle is necessary for it because that is the story. But I think the middle part is where I get lost the most, because I'm like, well, I know why they're doing it, but I'm not as interested in this stuff, if that makes sense. And then I don't know, it's all about the primitive primal needs of man, Jarrett. Like, what are some of your primal needs?
Such as finding out that Kaneto Shindo directed a film on the life of actor Taiji Toniyama, a 2000 biographical film about the actor that he had worked with. And there is apparently some behind the scenes stuff from Onibaba about getting drunk with the two actresses, I guess, as well as, and yeah, during like there's Ninjin, Onibaba, as well as in The Naked Island, a future creep.
Do you think that's also a sexual film?
Well, in the description of the movie by Player, the film focuses on Toniyama's alcohol dependence and his various sexual relationships, as well as his film work with Shindo.
It's kind of like us, eh?
I think that Shindo's got something he's interested in, and it's good for him.
Sure. I mean, he got paid for it, so
yeah.
How can you argue? But no, I think Onibaba is super cool. It's got a lot of really great details. Looks great. The grass is super nice. Score is wicked. Gets you amped up. It's a cool story. Sex stuff is a little weird, but what are you gonna do? As always, it's a little weird. But what are you gonna do, right, Jer? It's a cool movie. And I also, one thing I didn't talk about is, you mentioned it before, but the character of the Hole, I think is awesome. Like, I think it's so neat to have just like a physical property that is like a living character in a movie. I think that's cool. And then even the mask too. It's like, yeah, maybe the rain got some of that BPA acrylic stuck to your face and you were irritated. Maybe it was the wrath of God, Jarrett. I don't know.
And there is something about holes in Japanese cinema. Well, it's like there's this one movie, Empire of Passion, which is about a body getting thrown down a well. And then there's the movie Woman in the Dunes, which is about a man who is basically gets trapped in a pit, essentially, and but he's not allowed out. The villagers won't let him out. They want to keep him. And so he has to live in essentially a hole. So it's like something that pops up over and over again in Japanese movies. I'm not sure. Like, and there's like what's that movie called? The Pit, the American movie, which is also about holes. And there is something creepy about holes. It's an absence.
Tell me what you think about holes.
I think there's
what?
I can tell you about Who Hates Holes. The
Shia LaBeouf movie?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about Who Hates the Holes.
Directed by Joe Dante. Or another movie called, I think this is called also, like, was it Holes? Yeah, there's like
The Hole?
There's Holes and then there's Hole. The Hole.
I'm talking about Holes by Andrew Davis, 2003, the man who brought us The Fugitive, Under Siege, Above the Law, The Final Terror.
There was a Joe Dante movie called The Hole. Yeah, 2009.
It's probably not as good as Holes with Shia LaBeouf, though.
Well, see, there's Holes with your boy, Shy. There's the 2009 American 3D dark fantasy horror film directed by Joe Dante, The Hole.
Okay.
And then there's also The Hole from 2001 starring Thora Birch.
What's that one about?
Holes. At least a hole. Keira Knightley. Desmond Harrington. Directed by Nick Ham.
Who's Nick Ham?
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so tell me about Who Hates Holes.
Well, let's take a look here. Charles Yang.
Okay.
1 star. Onibaba is a creepy and wonderfully atmospheric film. it does not shy away from the very base performances of human nature, stirring into the mix a taste of the supernatural. However, I found myself uninterested past the 20-minute mark. It was not working for me. The relationship between the two women and the deserter, the whole love triangle thing, and the evil mask wasn't to my cinematic taste. Onibaba looks cool, but the ending is not worth the wait.
Interesting. This person gave 5 stars to Holes, the Shia LaBeouf movie.
Huh.
Jarrett, I'm not making this up. This is 100% accurate. I find that outrageous. Outrageous, Jarrett. 5-star movies aren't bad. We got Passion of the Christ, T2, Judgment Day, Mulholland Drive, Lord of the Rings, Ninja Scroll, 5 stars. Oh, shit. But then we got Hereditary and Qui-Gon. So I find it weird that they say they were waiting for it, but they liked Qui-Gon that much. This is this person's bio. Holds up the Infinity Gauntlet. Hear me, cinephiles of Letterboxd.
Oh, jeez.
I am movie Thanos. Read my reviews, ye mighty and despair. So, that tells you about his... Oh, half a star films, Jarrett. Swiss Army Man, half a star. Get fucked, man. What are you doing? What are you doing, bud? Crazy.
Anthony Paolucci. This is in all caps, 1 star. Straight garbage in the trash. Worst movie I've ever seen. Mr. Searing, I hope you see this. I'm assuming that might be his teacher.
I guess. They gave The Room 4 stars, which I find is strange because there's people who don't rate it, and then you have the irony crowd that gives it 5 stars, or the people who are like, oh, it's a half-star movie. So the fact that he gave it 4 stars, I find that very strange. Or whoever this person is. They gave La La Land 5 stars.
Of course.
Yeah. So, who else? What?
Finally, Carter Llewellyn, 1 star. A Hooptober 2015 review.
Ugh.
Well, this was something. I guess part of it, this is one of those films that gets hyped as a horror film when it is really a slow, uneventful drama with a few horror elements towards the end, which isn't what I was expecting from something that's often hyped as one of the best Japanese horror films. If you are expecting a horror film, stay away. If you want a pretty drama with a handful of poor, scummy people having sex and very occasionally killing someone to rob, with a cursed mask coming in at the very end, then this is for you. Yes, I know that sounds awesome, but it's really quite slow-paced and dull, even if the mask is good and has a weird quality to it I quite like. Overall, I found it disappointing.
Overall, I find this person disappointing, Jarrett. They gave the Texas Chainsaw Massacre a half a star.
Okay, there you go.
Also, half a star to Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia.
All right,
Jarrett.
Okay.
So here's their bio. They actually sound a lot like you. Corgi Wrangler, reformed literature, cultural studies student crawling towards the business world. Fan of Shion Sono and pulpy nonsense. Also, apparently, a lot of 70s movies. This site reveals hidden
truths
about
Texas Chainsaw or Bring Me the Head. Okay.
Nope. This is what they also said, Jarrett. This is the part I thought sounded like you. Also, a lot of Westerns, old films, Asian films, and 70s Italian trash. I don't know. I don't think Baby Driver is 70s Italian trash because they gave it 5 stars.
Right.
But they also gave The Mummy Tom Cruise 5 stars. So that's irony crowd maybe. And Love Exposure 5 stars because I guess they're allegedly a fan. Conjuring 2 5 stars. What the fuck? Nobody likes that movie. Get out of here. So anyways, weird person, whoever this is.
Huh.
But they're kind of like you, Westerns, Asian films, 70s stuff. Come on now.
Yeah. But 1 star.
Well, they're also in the Hooptober crowd, so it's something else too, you know?
I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for the hate.
Sure.
Any final words?
Nah, man, I think Onibaba is cool. That's it.
After the break, find our skeletons at the bottom of the hole with headphones and microphones.
That'd be a pretty funny thing to see.
I mean, I didn't make it over the hole when I leapt. I went straight down like a brick.
I never make it over the hole, man.
Straight down. There's like, when that one guy, the first one who gets thrown down the hole, I'm like, that was a guy.
Yeah, they really dump a dude down a hole.
Yeah, that was hardcore.
Yeah.
And that was after probably being drugged through the grass all that time, too.
Yeah, the guy had a bad deal. I hope he got paid.
In millet.